It's time for Bourbon with Friends, the bourbon podcast that never takes itself too seriously. Pull up a chair, grab a glass, and remember, a bourbon with friends can change the world. Here we go.
Oh, wait. I'm supposed to do something, right? Brian's not here. Fuck. All right. Welcome to Bourbon with Friends, everybody. This is me having to do this fucking intro here instead of Brian, because Brian, our good friend Brian, is not here this week. So we are going to just have Adriane and myself. So welcome to Bourbon with Friends. Something about the bourbon's going to change the world. I can't remember the exact intro here. I told you I was going to fuck it up, Adriane.
A bourbon with friends can
Is that what it is?
Can a bourbon with friends change the world?
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
You should have done the intro. But no. So yeah, we are here today. We're hanging out. Adriane, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm doing pretty good. It was a good weekend.
Yeah. Anything fun?
What about you?
Just working?
Yeah. It's just I work at a distillery, so I was doing table service this weekend. It was fun. I like to talk to the people, so it was good.
Yep. No. So guess what we're doing again this week?
What's that?
We're going to talk American Single Malts again. I know.
Ooh.
I know.
I'm new to that game. So
you're warming though, right? A little bit.
I'm warming. That's a good way to put it.
You're warming to them.
Yeah.
Your body temperature's warming to American Single Malts.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
One of these days we'll get you there.
With what we have here, this is certainly helping.
Mm-hmm. I would say that the last two experiences with American Single Malt have been awesome. It's a category that's obviously kind of new to a lot of people. I know it's new to you, and we've been very privileged to be able to talk to some of the people who are at the forefront of that. Getting to talk about Single Malt kind of way. I know this is bourbon with friends, but it's also whiskey with friends. So like it's not just selected down just a bourbon. We always like to talk to other people who are doing some cool things, and we do have one of those people here today. It is, let me see if I can do this and not fuck it up. There we go. We have Miles Munroe of Westward. What is going on, brother?
Hey, how are you, Martin? Adriane, good to be here. Yeah, cheers.
Absolutely, cheers. I think we're all drinking the same thing. We are going to get into that in a little bit here. I've got a couple bottles at my feet here that we're gonna talk through. But first, man, just introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, where you're from.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is I love doing stuff like this, So yeah, I'm Miles Munroe. I'm the master blender for Westward Whiskey. We've been around, actually we just celebrated 20 years this month as a distillery. Oh, yeah. I've been with the company for 12, just about, quite a long time. And I love doing this because a lot of us in production, that's where we stay. We're in the back of the house doing our thing. So it's always cool to come out and chat and have a whiskey and talk about why we do what we do. But yeah, Westward was founded in 2004, and we're all about single malt, and for good reason. We're up in the Pacific Northwest, right? We're out of Portland, Oregon, and up here is obviously a lot of breweries, but also this is where most of the really, really nice barley is grown. So for us, it's all about using what's at hand. So good to be here, ready to hang.
I know, and it's so cool, man. I don't know, it's insane to see from like the first American Single Malt, and like I think even at the time I didn't realize what I'm a Scotch person first. I talk about it. I feel like I talk about it in my fucking podcast, but like I'm a Scotch person first. So then I got away from it and started drinking more bourbons. I got introduced to bourbons that were different for me. Got introduced to rye and to wheated whiskey, and then all of a sudden I came across Single Malt, but I was like, but this isn't a Scottish brand that I know. I was a little taken back. The first one, in fairness, it was Balcones. So I was just like, so this is a single malt, but it's not Scotch. So like it took me a second. It's like it's such a simple concept, but at the same time, it's like one of those things that takes you a second to get used to it to really.
Oh, absolutely.
The difference now at that point, like when about that moment now to like it is like all the different companies coming out, obviously you guys as well. it's so cool to see that it's becoming something that an actual category. So it's super fucking exciting to me that it's going to be an actual category at some point. So
yeah, look, I mean,
I'm
and
here
that's
for
the
it,
cool
man.
thing is, there's a whole wide world of whiskeys, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, even just looking at single malt itself. I mean, I say this all the time, and we're with the whiskey. We're in over 30 countries now with Westward, and I noticed this kind of right off the bat. What I'd say or how I kind of start to talk here in the U.S. versus most everywhere else, because the single malt, is made all over the world, right? Scotland, Ireland, of course, Japan, the big ones, obviously, but I mean, malt whiskey is made all over the world, and some really great ones out there. And so,
Really?
When you talk about whiskey, most of the time, outside of the US, people assume you mean malt whiskey, whereas here, right, like bourbon is whiskey, right? That's our whiskey. That's what we invented. It's coming from the States, corn whiskey. So it's pretty cool to just, add to that category, right? Because ultimately we are an American whiskey. We're made here in the States. That's how we tout ourselves as American whiskey, but we're just using a different grain. We're using what's right here at hand,
So this might be a little bit of a cliche question, but for me, coming from somewhere like I love double oak bourbon. Like that's where I live. But how would you say, you just said there's single malts all over the world. What makes Westward distinguishable or different than maybe?
Well, quite a few things. Yeah, absolutely. And that's something we looked at early stages developed in whiskey. Is like, all right, well, this is the kind of whiskey that's made all over the world. Why? Like, why do it here? Like, what makes us different? And also, who will care, right? I think these are questions you want to ask yourself before starting something like a whiskey distillery. For sure. And I mean, for us, it's Westward's very distinctive. I think that we look to the traditions of single malt, of just the world of whiskey in general, and obviously love and respect them. That's why we do what we do. But really, we're just all about looking forward and just thinking about, all right, what's the future of whiskey, right? Like. Especially here in the States, we had prohibition, right? And that just decimated the spirit and beer and wine. And, and so we saw this as an opportunity to add something to the conversation, right? I mean, I often say Westward is brewers making whiskey. I was a professional brewer. Our founder, Christian, Andrew, our director of operations, most of us here come from brewing. And that really inspires how we make whiskey. Aside from just malted barley, we're also using an ale yeast. We're actually using a brewer's yeast for fermentation, which is not typical for whiskey. It's something that's, for a long time was pretty singular to us. You're seeing it a lot more now, but we use the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale yeast strain. That's what we use to ferment.
Really?
Yeah, straight up. And that brings so much more flavor to the wash before we even get to the still.
Can you so for me, because I'm not as knowledgeable as this guy over here, what makes how does that yeast work differently than like a traditional yeast?
Totally. I think, for a lot of whiskey makers, I'm not going to answer for everybody, but traditionally fermentation is quick. It's maybe 36 hours, 48 tops, and it's hot. And so you're talking about kind of blasting through your fermentation, getting all your alcohol and some flavors, but really looking to kind of correct or fix or even mask those flavors through your still, through aging, through cask finishing, something like that. For us, we're going almost a full week at a really cool temperature, just like a brewer would. And so the difference is, you talk about dried yeast, you find a lot in the world of single malts, your M strains, your Lallemand strains. These are dried yeasts that are going to produce some nice fruity notes, but really they're just there to kind of rip through and dry it out and get a lot of alcohol. Whereas a brewer's yeast is for flavor, right? That is obviously it wants to, you want to create ethanol, because what are we doing if we're not creating that, right? But it's more flavor focused. Brewing yeast can, as brewers, we know that you can produce over 600 different flavor compounds just from fermentation, just from using those ale yeasts. And so for us, that's where we focus, is more flavor, more time, more care during fermentation, partly because we can't help it because we're brewers and that's what we know, but also we just think it makes a really, really, really delicious whiskey. And so it's just all about adding good flavor kind of every step of the way. Yeah.
So what I know about very little I know about brewing beer, I've learned that it's kind of laborious in the way that you have to like pay more attention to it, right? Like temperatures and things like that. At least that's my understanding.
You're
so
totally right.
With it taking more time, I'm guessing, as you mentioned, there's more care that goes into that, and you're being more attentive to what's happening at specific times, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at beer, once you're done with your fermentation, you're going to go into conditioning for a little while, which is just like a, you know, kind of cold room or cold tank that's going to let everything settle and sort of marry. But then, you know, that's aside from dry hopping, that's pretty much your last bit of production before it's going into, you know, the keg or the bottle or the can, unless you're going to age it. So that's kind of your final step. And so, yeah, as brewers, I mean, it's a hugely important part of the flavor creation that you're doing. Also, I mean, all different, you know, beer styles have different yeast strains that go with it, right? There's certain Belgian strains that go with certain Belgian styles of beer because it's going to affect it that much. So yeah, I mean, it's got a huge impact on it. For us, that's just part of our process. You know, when it gets to distillation, I mean, we're doing pot distillation like most, you know, malt whiskeys, pretty much all single malt. The idea there, once we get to distillation, is really to kind of get out of the way. You know, we have custom stills that are built to really concentrate the flavor and not to really strip anything out. We call them low reflux, really just like high flavor. It's just concentrating that beer character. We call it barley eau de vie here at the distillery. Like our White Dog, our new make, it's just got so much like grain and fruit flavor from the fermentation. Like it's good on its own before it even goes in the barrel. So yeah, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say the most efficient way to make whiskey. It's definitely not the least expensive way to make whiskey. But that's how we want to do it, you know. And to get back to your question of how are we distinctive, that's a huge way for sure, you know, and even just how we approach fermenting whiskey. But another way, and you know, I love that we're talking here on, you know, Bourbon with Friends, because I often say that our whiskey is a hybrid of styles, right? Because most single malts, especially in Scotland, Ireland, that whiskey is going to get aged in used barrels, right? Like ex-bourbon, and then you're going to go into like sherry, port, something like that. We're going into charred virgin American oak barrels, just like bourbon.
Yep.
So we're creating this single malt whiskey, but we're aging it like a bourbon because we're going into those, you know, charred, never before filled barrels. So you're getting those like hallmark American whiskey flavors of vanilla, coconut, baking spice, right? Yeah.
Are you guys going to make any bourbon? Or do you make bourbon at all?
We don't. Yeah.
Sorry, it's the double oak in me.
She couldn't hold back, dude. She
I'm
had
sorry.
to answer the question.
This is so good. I'm just thinking, imagine the bourbon they could make.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting being where we are because with all the grain being grown up here and all the breweries, and now of course there's a lot of distilleries popping up in the Northwest too, you're getting a lot of these maltsters, right? These boutique malt houses that are, you know, malting all these grains. And there's a Northern California maltster that's malting corn now. So we're in talks. Really? We're in talks about getting some malted corn up here to see how that goes. Because that's our whole thing is, you know, if we're gonna stray from barley, like we've done some rye and some wheats added into our grain bills, but it's always malted because that's how we like it. We feel like there's so much more flavor with a grain when it's malted, right? There's so much more depth and complexity. So yeah, I mean, we're not, you know, nothing's ever off the table because we're pretty experimental here as far as what we're doing, for sure. But yeah, it's also kind of got to fit into this vision that we have. Right?
Yeah. And I feel like when it, especially again, coming from being a fan of and being a fan of like indie bottling when it comes to like a single malt Scotch, is like when they do go off the radar, it's single grain or something like that. You know, it's like they may do something kind of fun with like even in like Scotland, they're doing something fun with like a corn whiskey. They obviously can't call it bourbon, so they do like a single grain or something like that. And they're right. Like you said, they're malting that grain, and so it's. I think that'd be interesting to start to see that from you guys, because you guys do since you obviously you said you started brew, and I've never obviously been to the distillery. Do you guys have like in the distillery, like do you guys do beer at all?
Oh man, well, yeah, you guys, of course, welcome anytime to come out here. We
I'd
love
to,
showing it off. We do tours. I mean, we've got a tasting room, of course, and tours all the time. We actually, I mean, we tell people take pictures, ask questions. We have no secrets. Like we're showing it off. We love what we do.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, invitation extended, of course, definitely.
Please, yeah, definitely.
But no, we're not brewing any beer. I mean, we are because we turned it into whiskey. But no, we don't have like a beer
that's
brand.
Why I was curious. That's why I was curious. Yeah.
But I mean, you're seeing that. Like you're seeing, you know, breweries buying stills and kind of venturing into this territory, right? I actually even just found out today, like, oh, well, maybe they haven't announced anything. Never mind. I don't.
Darn.
I was
like, hang on. That was behind the scenes. I don't know if that's approved yet, but no, I mean, and there's a natural progression there, right? If you're a brewer and you're craft brewer, you're working with malted barley, you're working with fermentation, exactly. You put the pieces together, and that's what I did. I mean, that's how I got started on this path. Was I was a musician, so I was therefore a bartender, because unless you're famous as a musician, you need money, right? And that got me into like beer, wine, spirits, led me down the path to whiskey, became obsessed with single malt. And just kind of put the pieces together. This was like 20 years ago, but I bet really amazing beer makes really amazing whiskey, right? So one becomes the other.
I wanted to ask you that, so I'm glad you talked about it. I was going to ask you how you transitioned from brewing to distilling, and you just explained it.
The plan was to get to whiskey the whole time. But I mean, even like I said, this was 20 years ago, and I didn't know of anyone making single malt in the US. There were maybe 2 or 3. Tiny that I didn't know about. So I thought I was probably headed to Scotland or Ireland. I don't speak Japanese, so that didn't seem like a realistic dream of mine.
I don't know.
But and so you're seeing that a lot more, those connections between beer and whiskey, and it's such a cool thing. I think that's one of the best things about the craft industry with wine, beer, spirits, all of it. We're all super collaborative. We're all like pretty nerdy and like obsessed with what other people are doing in our industry. We're always just kind of like, what are you up to? Oh, that's cool. Like we should make something together. Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's just, I love that about our industry. It's such a cool thing, because to me, just, you get more ideas, you get more people, right? You get a lot more people coming to sit down at the table and like see what's going on. And then you get cool new flavors, right? Like who's mad at that? It's amazing.
I'm not personally mad at that.
We should start talking about one of these.
I
right,
do,
Martin? Don't you think?
I want to talk, but I do have to do a sidebar here because my man brought up something I need to talk about. Okay, you said you were in a band. What do you play? Do you play an instrument?
Yeah, I used to play in metal bands a long time ago. I'd play guitar and sing.
Okay, right on, dude. Yeah, because I'm a huge metal dude. So like I was just like I bet this dude was in a metal band.
Pretty. I'm not fooling.
Like, what was the kind of metal you were in?
It was mostly like noise metal. I mean, very, very inspired by like Jesus Lizard and kind of like late 90s, like touch and go bands. That kind of rowdy stuff. But still played for a long time, but eventually beer and whiskey just kind of took up all the time. And did you you're a musician?
I play guitar. I was in some oddly enough, is like when I was in high school, I was in a bunch of metal bands, but like I was the screamer. There was no singing, it was just screaming. But then I got back into playing guitar, and I don't do it like I'm doing it in a band. I just do it just kind of for a hobby at this point. But yeah, metal's always been my true north, to be fair. So
excellent.
When you
singer, nice. Did you do Invisible Oranges?
Yeah.
You hit the high notes.
Yeah, I did. Like I hit the so there was one band like we used to be like so there was a couple times where like I had to do like cover band stuff, and so I had to get into doing, what the fuck was the band that we did? Oh, Protest the Hero. I don't know if you know who they are. And he hit some insane high notes. I'm like, I can't fucking do this.
Yeah.
I'm like I can't do this. This is insane if I try to hit these high notes.
King Diamond hitting the high F over here. Like,
yeah. It was wild, but like I was
Amazing.
like, I'm just dude, like I'm like I signed up because all I thought I was doing was screaming, and you guys are trying to get me to hit some weird ass notes. So
You're like, wait, I have to sing? What?
I was like, whoa, like I didn't know how to do that. That wasn't on the resume. But but no, I had to ask Adriane. I'm sorry, I had to ask that because he brought
I know. He
brought up metal.
You love all things metal. It's okay. I
Yeah.
sing. It is just only people that listen to me are people who follow me on Instagram because I sing in my car.
And if it's like ratchet gangster rap music, Adriane's got it covered.
This is true, but I love rock music too. So let's continue our conversation about whiskey.
We're gonna skip over that. Okay.
Right. We can talk about music later. So what do we want to try first?
Well, I think are we all drinking the same thing right now currently?
Well, I got a little bit of everything poured, I think.
Into one glass? You're a party, dude.
Yeah, I think a few of us, we've got the bottled and bond in our glasses.
All right.
It seems like a good place to start. Yeah.
I always like to test Martin on tasting notes. So let's go.
Oh, yeah,
Martin.
she does this. Yeah. Okay.
Ooh, fantastic.
He's pretty good at it. Me, not so much. I tried this last Friday night for the first time, and it was like, wow.
Whoa. So you guys sent this out. I think I got this bottle 2 weeks ago, so I don't know if that says anything. Well, to be fair, I also have my buddy over who's another big whiskey guy. Shout out to Rob's Garage. So he came over, and I had just got these bottles, and he's just like, "Can we have that one?" He's like, "Because I've heard things about that one." I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." So we sat on my patio. We had a bunch of pours, some cigars, and stuff like that. So
yes,
naturally, things happen.
Hey, no judgment here. It's I'm glad you're loving it. Yeah,
delicious. Honestly,
it's cool because so this is our latest release. We have a club, Westward. We run our own whiskey club, and it started off as kind of a, I guess, tasting room only. Once in a while, like what has Miles been tinkering with, and here's a kind of one-off release, right?
Yeah.
Turned into, we developed the club, and then it was Oregon, and now it's nationwide, and we've got something like 3,000 members. It's gotten a little out of hand. I know I'm kind of scrambling these days to keep up with it.
Wow.
It went from a fun kind of side project to like, I think this is my full-time job now here at Westward. But I think it shows people are coming on this journey with us, ready to check out new things. But yeah, I mean, bottled and bond is not an experimental thing for us, but it's also not something you find with single malts, right? This is bourbon territory, right? And this is an old U.S. whiskey law that's, I think for a long time, just kind of fell out of favor because it wasn't necessary, right? This was passed because they needed some kind of like food safety act around whiskey because people were putting bad things in liquid and calling it whiskey, and it was poison, right? So eventually it just became sort of like, I don't know, not something that needed to be said, that you weren't going to put formaldehyde in your whiskey and call it whiskey, right? But it's been coming back around, of course, last few years. My friend Nicole Austin, she released that Dickel bottled and bond, which is outstanding. You're just kind of seeing it resurface, right? And I think the reason is it's just with some of the restrictions about what bottled and bond can be and what you can and can't do, really provides this kind of challenge for blenders that you kind of have to like only use a certain amount of things to make this delicious blend, right? It's almost like if you looked at like a painter's palette, and they've got like 30 different colors. Bottled and bond is like, cool, you have 2. Now make something cool, right? And so it's a challenge in that way. Because part of bottled and bond is the whiskey that you use, of course, must be 4 years or older, but it also must come from one distilling season.
Yep.
And what they mean by that is, January through June or July through December, right? But it all has to be from one of those 6-month seasons. So it all has to be around the same age. And for blenders, when we're putting together casks, you're using a few different ages because you want to get some top notes. You want to get a good base layer going. You want to get some good depth and complexity in there. And that can be done by using a few different ages, some younger, brighter whiskey, some, nuttier, darker, older whiskey to kind of flesh out your blend. But with bottled and bond, it's like, all right, well, how talented are you? Here's your short range of things you can use. So that's kind of what inspired me to release the bottled and bond was, let's
I'd say you're pretty talented.
I think
this is pretty good. This is pretty good. I didn't take it that way, but I was like, this is I don't drink single malts.
I was gonna say we're making strides here, Miles, because I've been trying for like a fucking year to get her to drink single malt. So like for her to say that is good.
There's been it's a very good thing, because there's a couple there's a handful that I've tried that I'm like,
you want to hear something wild?
I'm not drinking that again, but
you want to hear something wild though, Miles? I'm going to tell you something wild right now.
I'm afraid.
Yeah, okay.
What are you going to say?
You shouldn't be. But like Adriane and I, we don't live that far apart. We're like, 2 hours or something like that. So we've had several whiskey meetups that we've done, and we actually were at Journeyman. Which is a distillery, and they're based out of Michigan, but they're also here in Indiana. Yeah. And she drank single malt, and then also drank other bourbon.
It was there. I did it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And there was also other whiskey that we drank that night, and a group of whiskey people. You imagine we might drink a bit, and then she said that she was hungover the next day and blamed the single malt.
I did. I did. I was like, listen, I don't get headaches, and I have a headache. And the only thing different was I drank a single malt, and they're like,
or that we drank all day. Like there was also that. So I mean, like it could have been that as well. But Adriane, you ready for my notes on this one?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
We'll see, Miles. We're gonna see if we can.
What's the nose?
Oh, we're going nose first. Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, there's definitely. To me, there's always, no matter what, when it comes to barley, there's always a toffee note. There's always going to be a toffee note. That is just a note that, like, whether that's like that, like, if we're talking Werther's originals, it could be Werther's originals. But there is that kind of toffee note. There is
Grandma's favorite.
Grandma's favorite.
Okay, well, you got a point. You have 1 point.
I have
Keep
a point.
Going. You got a point.
Let me get another one.
Toffee is listed.
Okay. There is. Definitely the fruit that I'm going for, pear. Definitely a lot of pear.
Okay, so
the skin though.
You got 2 points now. So let's move on to the palate, because you already nailed the nose.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Which I gotta say, pear and toffee. I mean, there's other things listed here: toasted walnuts, gardenia, heather, green tea, meadow foam, honey, lemon, pear, and toffee.
I will say I don't drink a lot of green tea, so I don't know if I'd be able to pick up that note. So I wouldn't know that one. But like walnut, like definitely something toasted, but like I don't know if I would have pulled out walnut.
That's the first thing it listed.
So palate,
toasted walnuts.
Well, banana like crazy on the fucking palate. Like
toasted
crazy. Banana bread.
I don't. You got it, dude.
There's like the spice. The spice isn't pepper. The spice is ginger for sure.
Are you sure you didn't read this?
No, I don't even have that out. Miles, I don't do a lot of research sometimes. Like, I do just guess, and I promise that for anybody listening that thinks that I don't just guess, I just have been drinking a lot of whiskey in my life. And there's also like and Miles, maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, but there are baselines that you come back to, right? Like especially when it comes to barley, there are baselines that you come back to as far as notes. And I feel like it's things like you have to kind of divide it into like what comes from the cask, and that's when you're going to get a lot more of those nutty notes. I was about to say nut notes, but that's gross. Like nutty notes, where it's just like pecans and walnuts, but then vanillas, things like that. But there's also like the honey and stuff, to me, like that comes off like people sometimes confuse that with things like barley sugar. Like to me, like I always get so much barley sugar off of that, like that, just like really sweet note that you get from single malts. So then it's just dividing it and trying to figure out which one works the best, and that's usually how I do tasting notes. So
yeah, I mean, people ask me all the time, about how do you get better at it, right? And how do you kind of dial it in? It's like you do more, drink more, like that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously other ways to like train for sensory and like nosing for faults and looking for specific things, but ultimately tasting whiskey is about just tasting whiskey.
It is, yeah.
And I mean, you pick up on the vernacular, you learn the language, and as you say, then you can separate it out and say, oh, cool. So those like coconut notes I get, those are the lactones from the oak, right? Or that honey, that's from the fermentation, right? Yeah, you can kind of start to pick it out for sure. I'm a big fan of when I'm tasting to just, get a good sip and leave it on my tongue, almost like a sponge, just kind of let it sit and soak in, To me, that's a good first impression. I mean, people talk a lot about rolling it around and hitting all the points, and you absolutely should. I mean, when you really, really, really want to get to know the whiskey, of course. But really, it's just like letting it sit and going. And I mean, if you're someone that's not drinking a lot of high proof spirits, to put a 90 proof, 100 proof whiskey and let it sit, like that's going to burn a little, right? So it's just practice. It's breaking through the wall. It's just doing it over and over and familiarizing yourself with it for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you and the notes portion, because I've gotten better as time's gone on. I'm still not obviously as good as you all, but I have come a little ways in being able to distinguish. And I think it's important too. Like on here, we've tried some rums.
Yeah.
And I've tried a few more single malts. So I think it's super important to try other things, not just bourbon, right? I think it's helped me to try single malts. It's helped me to try port finishes and all the things. It's definitely I can definitely tell if in a blind sample, I feel like most of the time what I'm drinking, whether
it gives you perspective, right? You can kind of zoom out and just see all of it. You can see the whole spectrum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, same thing in our blending room here. We've got dozens of other brands of whiskeys, and we're constantly trying them, right? And just seeing where people are at, but also where are our palates, right? And how do we navigate through that? It's huge. Also, you should know. You said you're not as maybe as good as us. I think you probably are, but also
she is.
You have a genetic advantage. You know that women have thousands of more taste buds than men, also, right?
I have heard that. Yeah.
So
it's just more. It's more about. I need to try. I need to keep trying more things. I'm just behind, I guess is what I would say, because I just haven't tried as much. But the palate thing is real. I mean, for me, I've definitely learned that probably having begun doing this podcast is broadening your palate is a real thing. Like you have to try more stuff. You can't just drink double oak, Adriane. You have to try other things. You have to try other things, which I'm so glad that I've had the
revelation.
So,
a revelation that we just had on this podcast. Adriane is going to stop drinking fucking double oak whiskey and drink something else.
No, I'm never going to do that.
No, you're not. You're going to always live. You're going to basically, you're going to be carried out in a casket of double oak. When that inevitable time comes.
But that might be something actually.
But and that's the thing. Like I'll give whiskey to my sister who is not a whiskey drinker. But like my brother-in-law is, and so like we'll sit there and like I'll give her. She calls out notes like she has been drinking whiskey. It's insane. I'm just like, so what do you think this is like? And she's like nosing it and and she just starts pulling out these notes. I'm like, okay, well, what the fuck? You want to do a podcast because it's every Monday night we record.
That's too cool.
She's good. She's fucking good. But yeah, no. So I thought what we could do. We did this bottle and bond. This is fantastic, by the way.
I hope you're gonna say what I think you're gonna say.
What am I gonna say? I don't know. I don't want to disappoint you, to be honest with you.
Keep going.
So like what I was gonna say is like we're tasting through some of these. I think it'd be cool to do something with a finish. because I do want to talk about your guys' finishes a little bit. So I think what we could do is I poured it already. I've got the stout cask.
Yes, that's the one I want to try.
Excellent.
Was that what you wanted me to say?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool, dude. We're on the same fucking page, dude.
That's great.
We're vibing, y'all.
We're vibing, dude.
Right.
Let's
You know,
fucking go.
that's cool, because I was going to say, as long as we're talking about double oak, yeah, we might as well dive into one of our secondary finishes, you know.
Yeah.
Get on
And I
into
figured it was a good one because you guys are, like you said, you come from a brewer's background. So I am very
Yeah.
curious when it comes to that, because we actually just hung out with Westland last week.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they also do their beer finish as well. And it was a combination of a bunch of different barrels that they did for their finish on that. So I was comparing and tasting, and I like both of them equally. But like, being Pacific Northwesterners, both of you guys, I was curious about like the thought process behind this one.
That's right. I actually haven't gotten to try theirs, because that's a new release. Like,
That's super new. It's on pre-order.
released.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
my first time trying
I haven't
it too.
gotten a chance to try theirs.
It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our first ever stout cask was 2016, when a brewery that I used to work for here in Portland, remained friends with. They reached out every holiday season to make this Belgian chocolate imperial stout. It's an incredible beer. It's so good.
Sounds amazing.
And they'd never barrel aged it before, because it's already coming in at around 12.5%, and so it's a heavy hitter to begin with. But they thought, hey, you know, if you have a spare Westward barrel around, like, let's go. So I sent them one single cask. This was probably around this time of year in 2016. Sent them the barrel down. They aged the beer, and at the time they were still such a small brewery, they really had nowhere to put the cask, so they kept kind of kicking it around the brewery after they had emptied it, and eventually said, look, we're going to turn this into a planter or get rid of it somehow. And we're like, no, don't do that. And I thought, actually, you know what, man, I bet those stout characteristics, that like roasty, chocolately, you know, big kind of toasty notes, but that would be a great flavor match with Westward. So we just got the barrel back. And that one barrel had been Westward, then stout, and then Westward again. And it turned out beautifully. I mean, like I said, we sold it through the tasting room. It sold out in a couple of weeks. We figured we were onto something. And so we started this whole like stout cask program, where basically, I mean, we've got 80 plus breweries just here in the metro area alone around Portland, and, you know, no lack of brewers looking for delicious whiskey barrels. So we started this, I guess, I don't know, loaner program, where I told brewers, like, look, you can have these barrels for free, just give them back when you're done. And so that's what we kicked off. And so the cool thing about being so close to all these breweries is, you know, when we get them back, they don't have to be rinsed or steamed or dried out for, you know, fear of spoilage. I'm picking them up the same day they're emptied.
I was going to say, because they haven't sat around, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so we're talking about wet fill barrels here, right? This is direct from the source. They empty the barrels at most a day later. You know, we're sending the truck to pick them up, or they're dropping them off right at the barrel house where I am now. And we're filling them with, you know, 4 or 5 year old Westward, right? And so, there's still this great layer of stout inside that barrel. You're getting a true representation of that brewer's style, right? Of like what they were making. And we'll go another 12 to 14 months in that cask. And that's now turned into, one of our, you know, main, we call them our core expressions, right? That's one of the 4 that you can find everywhere.
So good.
So I think you probably already said this, but just even thinking about it, it's still wet on the inside of the barrel from that product being in there. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
I mean, talk about like a sense of place, right? Like,
yeah.
We've done some cool cask finishes with barrels from all over around the world, and I'm even careful with how I pick those out. I usually try to actually not go through a broker and contact the maker directly to make sure they don't steam the barrel, rinse it, sulfur it, do something to kind of preserve it, because I want that character that's still in there, right? That's so important to us, is getting a sense of what that is, because then it's truly collaborative, right? Like, it isn't just, okay, we got a bunch of random sherry barrels, we'll do a finish, we'll release it, it'll be good, but we're storytellers. We want to talk about how it went, who we met, how it all came together. Like that's important to us. And so that's what Stout Cask is, right? We're working with a bunch of different breweries. It actually got a little out of hand. We were up to, I think, like 35 or 40 different breweries that we had barrels at that we were trying to make sure we were getting back. We've narrowed it down to just a couple now, just to kind of make it easier on everyone.
Yeah.
At this point. But that also kind of turned into, well, some of these breweries that we're sending these barrels to, we're ex-brewers. We essentially make beer and turn it into whiskey. So let's get them over to the distillery. And so we've invited brewers to Westward, and we've created their stout or red ale or blonde, Belgian blonde with them. They'll come, we'll clone the beer recipe, make it with them, and then double pot distill it and turn it into whiskey.
It's wild, man.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool.
So why stout? Is that just, I don't know. I'm not even sure how I went, what I'm trying to ask, to be honest with you.
She winged that question, and I like it. I'm for it, dude.
Like why stout for a finish?
For a finish, when there are other types of beers, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I guess stout was probably like I said, it started with that one brewery, and it to me was so obvious. Like, that would be great with Westward. We should absolutely do that. But we've branched out since. We've finished in a few different styles of beer casks. Okay. IPA was a pretty wild one that eventually became amazing, but it took some years to turn that corner. I bet. Actually, in about a week and a half, I'll be heading to Australia for a couple of weeks for a release that we're doing with a brewery for exactly this. And it was a strong ale that I brewed in Melbourne with the head brewer 2 years ago. And then they aged the beer in Westward barrels with some, and then at the end, they added a tiny bit of cold brew coffee. And then when that beer was taken out, I was actually on the brewing deck making the beer, and I called the barrel house, Otis, who runs my barrel house and is a saint and puts up with all my crazy shit. I was like, Otis, I need you to empty 3 barrels of Westward into a tote and mail it to Australia. And he's like, okay.
Otis is like, dude, hell yeah.
Sure. Because the idea was, well, once the beer's out, let's put whiskey back in those barrels. And so this is a strong ale cask finish on Westward that we're releasing in a couple weeks, and I'll be down in Melbourne and Sydney to support the release and talk about our wacky adventures. So we've done other styles for sure, and had some really amazing results. Definitely.
So I gotta ask the obvious question, maybe not obvious. I don't know if this is obvious or not, but like, because this is what comes into my stupid brain, is you said Australia. One of my favorite from Australia, another single malt producer, Starward.
Incredible.
Starward Westward. I mean, I feel like it's, you know what I mean? Just saying. I mean, I'm just I'm bringing it up like off the top here, but I'm just joking. No, but like that'd be cool to do something like that. But like that'd be fun, man. Like I think that's an interesting experiment. Like where's the experiment? Yeah. Where does experimentation stop though? Like when it comes to like getting too wild, like where do you think it stops?
That's a great question, right? Because you can just do things for the sake of doing them, and where does that end?
I was gonna say never. It never stops, Martin.
It doesn't, but and I agree with that. But I do think
I understand.
There has to be a point like where it's like we're fucking creating Frankenstein right now.
This isn't gonna taste very good. Like, I'm just
as an ex-brewer, and I may ruffle some feathers here, and I really mean no offense, but to have been a brewer and then see people like throwing like cinnamon buns in a boil for a beer, like that makes my head hurt. Like I want to
wild,
like tear my hair out and scream and like, what are you doing?
Same.
But you know what? Some people might love that beer, and fuck, that's awesome. I'm not here to tell anyone what is good and what isn't. Drink what you like, right? But as far as how you're doing it, I think that's what's important. Not what you're doing, but how are you doing it? What's behind it, right? And for us, like I said earlier, we do have a vision. And so experimentation, that's a great question, because I look at it this way. To me, whiskey is 5 things, right? It's grain, it's water, it's oak, it's yeast, and it's time. When I say time, I mean like maturation and climate, wherever you're doing it. To me, those are like the 5 elements of whiskey. And so that's the realm in which we do our experimentation, because what we found over the years and years of doing this is even slightly changing one thing in one of those elements, you get very different results. Right. And so, I mean, that's part of why we're not making rye, we're not making bourbon, is we're like, we have so much more to do with single malt. We feel like there's just so much more to try to do with this. And I'll admit, early days when we were one of the few people making single malt, people would say like, why aren't you making a bourbon? Like, it just seems kind of, I don't know, not boring, but it's just sort of like dogmatic that you're just doing this one thing. And we're like, no. Like, there's so much that can be done in this one style. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's, to your point, to your question, I should say, of where does it end? It's just within that realm for us of, well, let's try a different yeast. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I got a wine yeast, this like Rhone, like French Rhone style wine yeast from someone here, a winemaker. And we used that. We swapped out our ale yeast.
Yeah.
The only thing that we changed in the entire recipe and like production process, and it made a very different kind of single malt, just that's it. Right.
And I'm thinking about like, everybody's saying, why didn't you make a bourbon, and you're into single malts? It's gotta be exciting for you right now to think, like you've been pioneering this kind of happening here in the United States, right?
Yes.
Like single malts were not a thing really. And
not at all.
they're, and now you've been doing it for at least 12 years, you said. So I think it's pretty exciting to think you kind of
super exciting,
paving the way, like you're making this happen, and you're opening the path for other people to make other things too. So that's just really cool.
Thank you. Awesome. And it's something that it's wild to think about sometimes. I feel lucky that my first distilling job, offered me the chance to help create a new category of whiskey. Right. Like that's amazing. That's super cool.
Yeah.
But to say that, like, we're passionate about what we do at Westward. We're certainly not pretentious. We are never going to be that. We are approachable. We are into this for the love of whiskey. This isn't about anything else but like really good flavored whiskey.
Speaking of flavors, Mr. Martin.
Oh, you're about to quiz me.
I definitely want to hear what Miles has to say too. I definitely get the chocolate, like a chocolate.
100%. Yeah.
On the nose, for sure.
The nose and the palate to me on the stout finish. And I think this is indicative of all stouts in general. Like they would have that kind of influence on a whiskey. It is just milk chocolate on the palate, baker's chocolate on the nose. It's a little deeper on the nose to me, but like once you get into that, and then like the banana is crazy on the palate, like crazy on the palate. And I think to me, like when it comes to like trying to figure out a signature note of a distillery, I mean, because I do associate certain like notes with distilleries, like Scotland, like there's so many different distilleries. Like I'm like, oh, that's Edgedour, that's Lagavulin, that's like different like distilleries there. Like I associate specific note. You guys so far, the banana note has been very consistent.
Interesting.
Across all. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can definitely attribute that to that brewer's yeast for sure.
And that's what I wonder.
Tropical fruit notes, stone fruit notes. Yeah.
Yeah. The peach is there. The little less than on the bottom of the bond, or the pear, sorry. The pear a little less than the bottom of the bond, but like, man, that chocolate note is pervasive, dude. And it's so good. It's so good. There's like a lot of vanilla on this one too. And like a little bit of this. There's a note here that I only get with rye whiskey. I only ever get with rye whiskey. But the finish has got mint. Like there's like this like little bit of mint, like just, and I never get that with American single malts, or I don't get that with single malts in general. It's just rye that I usually get that with.
Mm-hmm.
I have that written down.
Do you really?
Oaky vanilla. In the finish, it said oaky vanilla, chocolate almond, and mint. Palate was milk chocolate and banana. I'm telling you, dude, you got this
I need to fucking enter a competition.
You got this note thing down. You got it down. This is really, really wonderful.
It's very good.
I wish I had. I mean, obviously Martin nailed all the notes. It's incredible. I mean, to say that it's amazing that they're single malts. I'm just gonna say it.
I love it. We're
you see this, Miles?
We're converting.
We've almost got her, dude. We were so close to getting her.
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm sold.
We're so fucking close.
Honestly, that's such a high compliment because I mean, we're as experimental as we are, and as I think kind of out there as we are, especially as a category of whiskey that's not super well known. I like when I blend, I never want it to be like alienating or so out there that really only like a certain like niche sort of set of people get it. Yeah. Like I blend for balance, I blend for approachability. Back to your question about where does experimentation end? At the end of the day, and I know this is objective, but is it balanced? Does it taste good?
Yeah,
that's what it's all about. It really is. And I love it that you guys are picking up mint because that is an undercurrent in so much of Westward. It's really, it's there. Yeah, obviously we're pronounced sometimes in others, but yeah,
I'm gonna have to go back and play with that because to me, like I said, that's a note like mint, spearmint, even like I remember one time there was a whiskey. I'm not even joking, dude. There was one time where I said it reminds me of Newport cigarettes. Like
nice. Yeah, but that's sort of like mentholated quality.
Yeah,
right?
but it's like it's a very menthol, very menthol cigarette. But
yeah,
like there was even that one time that like I actually like came in and so I'm like, oh, that definitely has that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Adriane,
that's cool.
Yes, sir.
Do we do the squirrel question? I think we have to do it.
Yeah, do you want to do it? Do you want me?
I can do it. I can do it if you want.
All right, go ahead.
I'm okay with it.
Are you ready for the off the cuff question, Miles?
Absolutely.
It's gonna be fun.
I'm gonna give a little historical context to this real quick. So when we did our very first podcast, like Bourbon and Friends has had a bunch of different hosts at this point. So when Adriane, myself, and Bryan took over, we did our very first podcast and we just like did a bullshit one, like we were just talking to people. And Adriane had a squirrel that was staring at her from her yard. Like
an actual squirrel.
Yeah, like spread, dude. Just fucking spread, like looking at her.
All right.
And so then we just started this thing like where we asked a question that was related to squirrels, and then it just kept going. And now every single interview we do, it's squirrel related, is what we do.
Terrific.
So the one that I've got for you, my friend, the one that I've got for you, we do something different every time.
Okay.
Where the fuck is it? There it is. So if you had to fight an elephant-sized squirrel, so a fucking squirrel that's the size of an elephant.
Yeah.
What weapon would you choose? You can't choose a gun because that's easy. You have to choose a weapon to fight an elephant-sized squirrel.
An elephant-sized squirrel.
It's dangerous. Wow. It's got tusks, probably.
Ooh, I know what my answer would be.
Yep. It can be anything else. It can be anything else.
Anything else.
I'm gonna say my 66 Ford Fairlane.
That's great. You said anything else, Martin.
I did say anything else.
You said anything else.
Okay, here's why. I'm thinking squirrels. I know it's the size of an elephant, but like I'm thinking roadkill. Like, yeah, give me behind that. Give me behind that V8. I'm going.
That thing's solid. That thing's solid metal.
I love, dude. That's the greatest answer ever because you're like,
that's so awesome.
You're like, if it was a normal size squirrel, regular size car, elephant size squirrel though.
A Ford Fairlane.
We fucked that squirrel up, dude. I'm gonna run over. I'm running over this bitch's toe, dude.
I mean, start somewhere, right?
That's awesome. That's such Adriane, like, because you said it, like, what's your answer? Because like I kind of want to know your answer. Is
oh, so I immediately was thinking like I would get a slingshot, like David and Goliath style.
David and Goliath style.
You're gonna take its eye out.
I don't know. That's just immediately what I thought of. It would be like David versus Goliath. I need a slingshot.
That's so good, dude.
I
would
like
love.
Miles is way better. Is way more logical, and it would actually
It
work.
is.
I think.
It is. But I love your answer because now all I see is like this big fucking squirrel and you with like a
And me
bottle of
with
bourbon. Like slingshot in this fucking eye, dude. That's so good, dude. That was such a good answer. I love that so much.
Yeah,
Both
that
your
was
answers
fun.
are amazing. That was good. Didn't expect that. Didn't expect
Yeah,
that.
no, that's why we ask the question,
I
Miles.
mean, right?
It's
I was
always
gonna
fun.
take. I was gonna say an axe, so that's like way better than like what you guys said. I'm going for the legs, is what I'm trying to say right there.
Yeah.
So-
Pretty nimble.
So,
They're pretty nimble.
so
I'm gonna do some
I'm gonna
Achilles
do
heel of this shit, dude.
I'm gonna do this, Martin, so that you can ask the next question.
What's the next question? Oh, we talking about. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Okay,
Yeah,
so
see.
sorry, we're professional. But so, so I will say something right now is that when I walk in a bar and I go with people that like sometimes are not always whiskey drinkers, right?
Sure.
And they and sometimes they know that I am. They know that I'm a fan of whiskey and stuff like that. So they're just like, "What are you gonna order when you go in there?" I'm like, "I'll figure it out." Because when I walk into a bar, the first thing I notice is fucking bottle shape. If I can't see, because I got bad eyes, I got glasses on. So sometimes like I'll see the spread on the fucking bar, and I'm like, "Ooh, I know that bottle. I know what is it though." Your guys' bottles, and I'm not fucking joking or blowing smoke up anything, are beautiful.
They're
Thank you.
really
That was the very first thing that all three of these people sent me as soon as like we received these bottles. Like, shit,
these are gorgeous. Like I want everyone to see them.
yeah,
Thank you.
Gen-
Yeah.
genuinely beautiful. So I'm curious if there's some kind of inspiration behind the bottle shape that you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we call them whiskey diamonds.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what
That,
that's
like kind
the
of
I mean,
faceted shoulder there.
yeah, that's
I mean, before this bottle, our other Westward bottle was that, pretty kind of commonly shaped, like round shoulder tapered whiskey bottle, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that worked. That was great. We loved it. But yeah, we really felt like we wanted to be a lot more distinctive with it and have it kind of tell our story, right? It's like, one of us can go tell our story, but
Of course.
there's so many more bottles out there. What if the bottle helps tell the story, right?
So cool.
And that's what's going on here. So, I mean, you still have that tapered shape, which is like classic American whiskey bottle, shape. But yeah, this sort of angular, kind of peak shoulder here. That's to tell about where we're from, right? I mean, we're in Portland, we're at the bottom of the Willamette Valley. We're surrounded by mountains. We've got the coastal range to our west, big, round mountain range that separates us from the Pacific Ocean. And then just to our east is the Cascade Range. That's where the biggest peak in Oregon is, Mount Hood. And, on a rare, clear day in Portland, you can see 4 or 5 peaks, from the city, like where you are. It's beautiful. And Mount Hood just kind of hovers over us as we, and it's got glaciers, right? It's got year-round snow up there, ice. And so those peaks are kind of to allude to the Cascade Range, which is where we get our water. When we talk about the water for making whiskey, it's all coming from this mountain range just right outside of town. They're called the Cascade Mountains because there's dozens and dozens and dozens of waterfalls all throughout this mountain range. Our water source is from the mountains, right? It's snow melt and it's rainfall coming down from the mountains. Super soft, gorgeous, beautiful mountain water. And so that's that kind of cool, like angular shape to the bottle itself. And it stands out, right? It's something that's really distinctive. Even the top, these are copper colored tops. Yeah. This, kind of an alluding to our stills, our copper pot stills as well. You look at even the labels, right? And there's, you look down below on that kind of footer label for either the original or Pinot or stout cask or even the cask strength, and you'll see a different element symbol in the center of that lower footer label of, wood or grain or, a different ingredient that makes that particular release distinctive.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really thought a lot about how we can tell more of our story just from the bottle itself.
Was there ever like a different bottle design? Because I'm always curious about that. Like, was there ever like a different, like a shape or anything like that?
That was like in the running for.
Yeah. Like for something else. Yeah.
I don't think so. And we definitely wanted to include the mountains and that sort of angular, faceted shoulder.
Yeah.
But I mean, if there was, the CMO never showed them to me. But yeah,
Okay.
This was the
I was just curious.
Winner.
Yeah, because I love I love learning how you get to something, right? And to me, this is like, I don't think, I'm not just blowing smoke. I'm not just saying this because you're on here. This might be one of the best bottles I've ever seen.
It's really not like anything else.
It's not like anything else, and I think
it's not like anything else. I mean, it's really gorgeous.
Like,
and they're burly bottles too. I've seen them, fall off the bottling line and they just bounce.
They're heavy.
Burly,
it's
man.
Really solid. It has a nice wide top. I mean, even when you take like, I don't know, it just, I'm not going to drink out of it like maybe I normally would, but
she'll chug a bottle every once in a while. It's fine. And
look, I'll say it again. No judgment here at all.
No judgment.
Nobody else drinks my whiskey,
so safe space.
Not?
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. So that's the thing. Like I like the classic bottle shapes. I do, of course. You know what I mean? Like I love seeing like the classic bottle shapes. And I love seeing consistency sometimes. But like when I see a bottle like where I'm like, I need to buy that just because of that, or a label or something like that. Now, obviously, the whiskey has to stand up for me to buy another bottle. But
of course.
Yeah, your guys' bottles are some of the most attractive bottles I've ever fucking seen.
But
honestly,
I mean, look, we drink with our eyes first, right? We do. Right?
I do.
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong.
So that actually. Oh, actually, did you have a question, Adriane? Sorry.
Well, you talked about the label, the lower label on the bottles and how it was distinguishable as to what grain. I hadn't noticed that. I'm so glad you pointed that out. So it kind of leads into what we wanted to talk about next is just if you had any other finishes that, or even maybe like, I'm trying to think of a better word than the word I'm thinking of, but I'm just going to use it anyways. Like a fantasy cask, like something that you would love to do at some point, like a bucket list cask, maybe, but even not just that, but maybe something that you're looking forward to maybe doing in the future.
Well, look, I mean, there's no end to it as far as the type of cast that we're going to hunt down, right? And you want to make sure that it's going to work with the flavor, right? Because ultimately, with any cast finish, like I'm not trying to flavor the whiskey, right? I don't make stout flavored Westward. It's in stout barrels that enhance what's already in there, right? So it's raising the volume on the like chocolatey kind of toffee roasty notes that you get in Westward. That's stout cask. It's turning the volume up. So I'm never trying to just get something that'll change the actual character of Westward. So, but I think for better or worse, they trust me to just do anything as far as ideation and R&D. So I've really kind of got most of the barrels that I'd ever want to check out in the barrel house or released at this point. I'm doing a lot with acacia wood right now, which is really, really fun. Okay. Acacia, it's a hardwood. And you find it with winemakers. Generally, they do like some white wine maturation with the acacia. But I'm doing a bunch with Westward right now, and it's incredible. It's really, really cool to just kind of do a deep dive into this wood that's not super common really at all with spirits.
Where's that wood from?
It grows all over the world. What I'm getting is from France, because that's where the cooperages are that make these casks. Okay. Right? I mean, it's like, I got the idea in Australia. They've got, I think, like 1,000 different species of acacia there. And I was in a botanical gardens and saw all these different varieties. I was like, man, and it's a hardwood and it's a beautiful wood. I wonder if anyone's doing anything with whiskey, with it. And then that's how I found out there were some, white winemakers using it. And then, kind of tracked down some winemakers here in the Willamette Valley, got some used barrels from winemakers to do some experiments, and then tracked those casks back to France. And so that's how I ended up in like Toulouse and Bordeaux, talking to these cooperages, getting them to make me some acacia barrels, which, it's French acacia. It's grown right there. It's grown all over the world, but acacia is super fun. But wow, fantasy cask, honestly, and I'm not even joking right now, but Rumpelmans.
Whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay, so
it is kind of a
I didn't expect it. I didn't expect that. I think
right, I was going this way, and then
you did. You went like a really. That was 360, my man.
Maybe 180, maybe 180.
Is it 180? I don't know degrees.
That's 360 is all the way around.
So we would end up back in the
right.
We would have came back to the same cask. Okay, I get that. Okay.
Well,
anyways,
okay.
Adrian keep me on track of fucking degrees, dude.
Let me tell you why. Yeah. So I love Rumpelmans. Unironically, I think it's a delicious thing. I think it's the nectar of the gods. I punish people around me with it all the time. I think it's wonderful.
It's so good, dude.
Also,
he could have said Fireball.
Well, could have, but he didn't.
Did we not talk about the minty characteristics of Westward not that long ago?
I was just thinking that, that doesn't surprise me in terms of the minty undertones.
I love a good connection, dude.
Yeah.
There you go.
So look, I mean, obviously no one's there. They're not barrel aging Rumpelmans, but if we're talking about dreams, that's my dream is Rumpelmans take some Westward casks and then we get them back. Yeah. Okay. That's the dream.
Okay. Is there off the back of that, is there a dream collab with another distillery that you'd want to do?
Dream collab. Well, I've been trading casks with single malt makers around the world the last couple of years, kind of just reaching out to see who wants to trade barrels so we can kind of just talk about the maturation climate in that way of so Milk and Honey, I think they go by M&H now. They're in Tel Aviv, right?
Israeli,
in the desert. And so we traded a bunch of casks. We just traded them back and forth to see all right, what's my whiskey going to do in your casks? What's your whiskey going to do in mine? Right? I'm up here in a valley in the Northwest where it rains all the time, right? Totally climates. And I've traded casks with a few other distilleries in that way. Just kind of keep that conversation about climate and where you are and how that affects your maturation going. Working on a few others right now. I really should with Starward. I've been to their distillery. They're making whiskey in a lot of the same ways as we are, which is really cool. A lot of similar production methods and sort of concepts, which is great. Honestly, I think it would probably have to be Bunnahabhain on Isla. Okay. I love Bunnahabhain.
Okay.
Yeah, and
you just piqued my interest because Bunnahabhain is not even joking. It's one of my favorite Scotch distilleries.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So.
Okay, Miles. He loves Scotch. Okay.
I love Bunnahabhain so much, and it's even beyond just me liking it. I got my dad. My parents are from Scotland. They were born and raised there, and my dad came over from Scotland, and he was drinking for a long time. He's the one that got me into whiskey, but at the same time, he stayed in the Glenfiddichs. He stayed in the Glenlivets, and then all of a sudden, I started branching off and loving stuff, and then. Eventually, I'm like, you need to try Bunnahabhain. So he tried Bunnahabhain. So now that's he and I's dad and son fucking distillery.
Yes.
So amazing. I love that you said that because I think that would be insane.
Absolutely.
Like those coastal, like that salinity that they have there. It's so it's so good, dude.
Yep.
And most of their stuff is sherry, for the most
It
part. Like,
is.
yeah. So, it's I think that would be an amazing collab.
I,
Oh
I
my
love how
god.
they distill too. Like I've been to the distillery and their stills are similar. I won't say the same, but pretty similar to ours, and the kind of same concept of like bigger, heavier, like oil or spirit, right? I think that's why they don't really have to lean on peat so much.
The peated stuff,
yeah, like the character is already in the spirit. So I think that would be, that would be super cool.
Because that is a thing. Like that's the thing. Like you have a killer distillery that's on Isla that is not that peated for the most part. They do have peated expressions and they're very good, but that's not their main thing. I know you guys have experimented with peat, right?
We haven't.
Sorry. I thought I saw something. You guys like tried something at one point.
Well, I mean, and more American single malt makers are. Balcones definitely has. Westland also. I think there's a few others, and again, nothing's ever off the table, right? It just, for me, it kind of has to make sense into like what we're doing and why we're doing it, not just like I bought peated barley from Scotland and I'm going to use it, right? Like, okay, but why, right? Like, what's the point of that? Like, there's a lot of people that in Scotland that make peated whiskey, and it's amazing. So what are we doing to add to the conversation? So,
of course,
but what we have done is it's still aging. I think it's about maybe 4 years old right now. It's going to be a little while, but all along the coast of Oregon here, we have the coast. We don't have the beach because the mountains just go right into the ocean. But there's these beautiful alder trees that grow all along that coastal range. And so we had a maltster use felled alderwood to smoke malted barley.
What?
And so we have Oregon coastal alderwood smoked whiskey aging right now. Yeah.
What?
And that to me makes that's more of a like sense of place, right? Like this is from where we are. This is from our environment, like our climate, right? Like that's what we're going to do.
I love that you have a reason for everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives it much more meaning. It gives it much more validity. It gives it it's like the way you're putting love into whiskey.
Yeah. Right. Well, right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And it's going somewhere with it, right? Because we often say that Westward is a whiskey that like speaks of its origins, that can tell you like, hey, it's from the Northwest, right? It is. Yeah. Okay. What does that mean? Oh, well, we use peated barley from Scotland. Like, well, that doesn't. Okay. So
that's Scotland.
It doesn't fit.
Okay. That's their environment, and that's cool. I mean,
it's great.
This is just our vision, our direction, where we want to go with it. That's where we're at. Something else I'm kind of working on is I mean, it's slow going, but once you get over the Cascade Range to our east, that's all like grasslands and high desert.
Yeah.
Right. And then by the time you get to Nevada, you're talking about playa, right? Like so much of Oregon is desert. And I think, a lot of people, when they think about Oregon, they think of where we are, the Willamette Valley. You get, 30% rain than the national average. Everything's green and lush, and it is where we are. But you get over those Cascades. I have some family out there they have a ranch in Central Oregon, and I've been going out there since I was a kid. And like the juniper and the sage smells that you get out in the high desert, it's incredible. And so I'm working with a maltster right now on high desert sage smoked malt. Again, something that of where we're from, tells our story, right?
So this leads me.
I like the sound of that.
That's great. Exactly. Like, and I think this and I hate, my least favorite fucking word in the dictionary is serendipity.
You really want? Okay. I was like, do you really want?
What the hell are you? Like, what are you gonna say? Jesus Christ! What the fuck were you gonna say? We're gonna talk about that offline.
Never mind.
Yeah, I was gonna say Jesus Christ. But no, it's
I'll fill you in later, Miles.
It was like when we go backstage, we'll talk about that. But like, no, serendipitous. Like I hate that word. I don't know what it is. It's just a gross word. But like at the same time, I think that's apt right there. There's a very serendip. I hate saying it so much. It's so gross.
Serendipitous.
It's such a stupid word, but like it makes sense in like this whole thing. Like, and I think the serendipitous part of this is because I was going to ask you a question about this because so there's a very hot topic word. You know what I'm going to say, Adriane.
Now you're about to hear my least favorite word.
So
go for it. Tell the world, Martin.
It's not that it's I think that
it's not a bad word.
It's not a bad word. It's not one of the bad words that I say. But like, so there's the word of terroir, right? It's controversial. It's controversial, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's controversial in the way that we categorize certain things, like when it comes to definitely single malts. I think for sure. I think it started in Scotland, like where like it's like what is terroir? Like is it legit? Because like you look like you look like wine. Obviously, it makes sense for wine. The grapes are from there. The fucking dirt is from there. Like everything's from one spot. But you guys do something that is so much close to terroir that like could actually be the definition of that.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, like, my understanding of what that word means is very much what's going on here.
Exactly.
Very, very
so
much.
like,
yeah.
So like, what do you guys think is like the biggest influence on terroir?
Well, and you bring up a good point of it. It's a bit of a contentious term, right? Because it's definitely thrown around way too much.
It's thrown around.
Yeah. I think it's stuffy.
And maybe it's sort of misapplied in a lot of situations, right? I think for us, we're big believers in terroir and whiskey. I think we practice that, and I think you can say, well, wow, this is a distilled product, so during that process, aren't you sort of separating a lot of that terroir during that really disruptive process? And I say that depends on how you do it. Right. If you're talking about running your wash through a column still with, 20 or 30 plates, that's going to strip out every bit of character. Yeah, you've lost your terroir, and that's okay. Right. Like, fine. That's not the style of whiskey you want to make. For us, it is. Our custom designed pot stills are made to really have a very small amount of refinement, of reflux. Their whole goal is to concentrate the flavor that's already there. I said it before, barley eau de vie. That's what we're making before we put it in the barrel, right? So no, it's important to us in telling our story, in again using barley that's all grown here in the Pacific Northwest. And then also, if you look at the word terroir and the French meaning of the word, because they have a word for everything, which is astounding.
They do.
Right?
And lots of cheeses, like a lot of cheeses. Like it's insane.
Amazing.
It's insane. They're good, but like there's a lot of words for it. Yeah.
Well, and it's terroir also means the culture that is around making it, right? And the people that are actually making it. That is part of the terroir, right? And so in talking about how we approach it, what we like to do, what we're trying to get out of it. I think that's something that you can apply to Westward and what we're doing. We're big believers in it. And it's, as I said before, just all about flavor.
Yeah. I love that, dude. It really is. Like, I think that's such good. I had a nerdy question, but I will save it for another time.
And so we ask this question to everybody every time too.
This is my favorite question. The squirrel one
is good, but this is the one that
better.
we treasure. Okay, so we always ask people what their favorite memory is around whiskey. I mean, this could be when you were a kid. Obviously, you probably weren't drinking whiskey when you were a kid. If you were, no judgment.
18 plus.
But just
21.
If somebody asks you what your favorite memory is around whiskey, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
That's a great question, because I mean, it's so evocative, right? Whiskey can take you places or remind you of something, or you smell it and you're like, wow, this smells like my grandma's blanket for some reason, right? Like it brings you somewhere for sure. For me, it's what set me on this career path, was that moment of
Shit, yeah, dude.
I was living in Kansas City, Missouri. I was helping to run a whiskey bar, which is on the top floor of this old steakhouse there, and just this wall of whiskeys behind me. I was probably 22, 23, drank whiskey, didn't appreciate it as much as I came to. But yeah, I had access to all that amazing stuff. And it was a moment with Glenfarclas 18 that it hit me in a way that, I mean, I can still, I'm there right now. Right. And
You're there right now.
It switched something to where I was like, this is what I want to make this. I want to make whiskey like this. Like whatever everyone's doing, I want to do it. Like, that's what I want to do. That's the moment. Yeah. Everything changed.
I love those profound moments.
I would, yeah, that's what I mean. Like we've had some really cool answers, but like, I love that so much. Like, I think that's so fucking cool, man. Like, that's like, cause I remember the first time I tried Glenfarclas, because it felt different. It felt musty. It felt like this like different like this, because they're fucking old. They're fucking old, dude. That is a very old distillery. And so like and Adriane, I know you have not tried Glenfarclas before. I'm assuming you have not tried Glenfarclas.
Yeah, there's quite a few scotches that I have not tried. I'm familiar, obviously, because I hear you talk about them all the time. But
I do. And they are such a cool one, because they are such a, like, literally still family owned until this day.
One of the last independents, yeah.
Like one of the like where nobody's over them. Like where there's not like a bigger
the name again.
Glenfarclas. It's a very easy bottle to look at, like when you see it. And
kind of like this one.
That was so good.
Yeah.
That was so good. That was good, dude. That was so good. Okay, so so I was gonna ask you, we have one last question, and because they're behind the scenes telling me not to ask this, I'm gonna do it anyways because I don't care. I'm being bad, dude.
Brian is watching from 30,000 feet.
Yeah, he's literally. He's like, don't ask this question. But like, what I want to know is, because like, I think to me the most interesting thing is a distillery setup. So if I walked into Westward, I walk in, you're giving me a tour. What kind of equipment do I get to see?
As opposed to like not see? Is that what you're asking? Like,
you can tell me what I wouldn't see.
Well, you mentioned
like,
the pot still.
Yeah.
Let's
so
talk,
just what types of equipment you're using.
Sure. Got it. Oh, okay. Because I'm like, we're super transparent. Like I said, we tell people, like, take all the pictures you want. You see something funny, like, point at it and ask, like, what is that? Right?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Our setup, certainly unique, because I mean, on one half of the building, it's a brewery. Yeah. Right. We're talking about there's a grain silo that feeds into a 4-roller mill, which we're super nerdy about our crush size of our grist. But then that goes right into the brew house. We've got an oversized 30-barrel, that's beer barrels, brew system. It's a 3-vessel craft beer system. It's a mashed lauter tun. It's a kettle. Like, we are making an unhopped pale ale. And then our fermenters are cylindro conical brewer fermenters. They aren't open top. We're not doing a sour mash. This is, clean, slow fermentation. So you walk into that side of the building, you're going to see a brewery. Straight up. That's what it is. We are making beer. You get to the other side where the stills are. These are custom designed pot stills, right? These are made for flavor. These are made for being we call it an unforgiving style of distillation, because there's no hiding there. It's going to just magnify everything that you did on the other side making your beer. So these are custom designed pot stills. Our wash still was built for us, custom down in Louisville, Kentucky by Vendome Copper and Brassworks. Gorgeous still. And these stills, are just making a super concentrated, high proof version of our wash. So on the other side, what you're going to see, these stills just kind of chugging along. Our wash stills is pretty big, but a little over 11,000 liters still. Definitely a beast. And that's, you're going to see it in action. I mean, you talk about, still design. These are super small, like swan necks toppers, boil balls at the very bottom of it, right there at the top of the pot. The line arm is super small diameter. It's angled down towards
short.
the condenser. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe like a meter run. Like it's quick into a condenser that is, shell and tube, shotgun style condenser, 33 straight tubes coming down with cooling around it. No coils. Like soon as this,
you don't have coils?
No coils, just straight tubes. Yeah. Shell and tube condenser. Again, the idea being, and we distill at a super fast rate. We don't want any flavor stripped out. We want everything coming over. As soon as it's gonna, vapor, turn into vapor, right? We want to capture it again. We don't want really much of
that's crazy.
Any kind of stripping. Yeah.
That's just because like we've obviously talked to like a couple other like people like that's insane to me. Like I know like that's Adriane, like we're gonna talk about that after. And like why that makes a lot of sense. Like that,
Okay.
that's
right.
so fucking cool, dude. I love that. That's so cool, man. And that's what I like. I think the nerdy question has to happen. Because like I want to know like what I want the most is like when people walk into these distilleries and they do these tours, they get to really get a sense of like what you guys do, like the equipment, because like I feel like sometimes like when you get the equipment explained to you, like I don't know what the fuck that means. So like having your explanation there, fucking beautiful, dude.
No, I mean,
I want to thank you, dude.
Yeah,
not even joking. I want to thank you for everything, dude. I'm gonna be honest with you.
This has been an awesome time. Like I've had a great time.
Same here. Super conversation.
Love this. Miles, you're clocking in on our second longest fucking podcast. But it's so good, dude. Like I really do like it. Like
a wonderful time.
Yeah, it's been insane, dude.
It's my pleasure.
Dude, like every time. So what I have to do right now, I have a responsibility every time to do this fucking plug for this sponsor that we have. No, I'm just joking. So what I want to do, what I want to do right now is, dude, like let's give a shout out to our sponsors. The thing about 10th Mountain Whiskey, what I like a lot, and I know Bryan right now is sitting there like, what the fuck is he gonna say? I'm not gonna say anything. What I'm gonna say is they're our sponsors, and I love them so much. So the 10th Mountain Whiskey, they're up in Gypsum, Colorado, one of my favorite states in the world. It's a centennial state, for God's sakes. You can find them on all social media platforms. You can also find them on 10thwhiskey.com. You can go there. You can ask them questions. You can buy merch. I have shirts from them. We talked about it last week. I've slept in a couple of those shirts, for God's sakes. It's very good. You can also find them in 40 different states through online distribution. It sounds like I'm reading a script, but I am. And you can also find them in 28 states across the country through regular retail distribution. And they're amazing. Honestly, guys, please go check out 10th Mountain Whiskey. They're amazing. They are our sponsors. They love us. I love them. It's mutual. So, yeah, I'm very happy to have 10th Mountain Whiskey, 10thwhiskey.com. Go check them out. So that's it.
All right. Well, thank you again, Miles. Yeah, you did awesome.
Okay.
And thanks everybody for joining wherever you're at in the world. And remember, a bourbon with friends can change the world. Cheers, everybody. Have a great week.
Cheers, y'all.
That's it for this episode of Bourbon with Friends. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, leave us a review to make it easier for others to find the show. You can also check us out on Instagram at BWF Podcast. Thanks for listening.